$2 trillion. That's larger than the entire economy of many developed nations, larger than the GDP of Australia, larger than the stock market value of almost every company on Earth, and on June 12, 2026, investors assigned that value to a single company, SpaceX, a company that just 20 years ago was being mocked by much of the aerospace industry. But the most important number isn't the $2 trillion valuation. It isn't the $75 billion raised in one of the largest IPOs in modern financial history. And it isn't the fact that SpaceX instantly became one of the most valuable companies on Earth. The real story is much bigger, because for the first time in human history, global capital markets are directly funding the infrastructure of space. And if SpaceX succeeds, future generations may look back on this IPO the same way we look back on the construction of railroads, the electrification of cities, or the birth of the internet, not as a financial event, but as the moment the space economy became real. 20 years ago, none of this looked possible. SpaceX was a startup with ambitious goals and almost no credibility. A private company trying to do something only governments had ever achieved: reach orbit, reuse rockets, and eventually expand humanity beyond Earth. Most experts dismissed the idea entirely. The economics didn't make sense, the technology didn't exist, the risks were enormous, and yet somehow SpaceX survived. Then it scaled. Then it dominated. Today, SpaceX is responsible for roughly 60 to 70% of all orbital launches worldwide. No company in aerospace history has ever achieved that level of dominance. But rockets are only part of the story, because SpaceX didn't just build launch vehicles, it built infrastructure. And infrastructure is where real power lives. Throughout history, the most valuable companies were rarely the companies selling products. They were the companies controlling the systems everyone else depended on. Railroads, oil pipelines, electricity networks, telecommunications, cloud computing, and now, orbital infrastructure. Starlink may be the clearest example. Most people think Starlink is simply an internet company. That description is becoming increasingly inaccurate. Today, Starlink operates nearly 10,000 satellites. It serves more than 10 million users. Its coverage extends across more than 100 countries. And unlike traditional telecommunications companies, Starlink's infrastructure exists above national borders. Every satellite added to the network expands a global communication system that operates independently of terrestrial infrastructure. That has enormous implications: military communications, emergency response systems, autonomous vehicles, financial transactions, global logistics, artificial intelligence. The future value of Starlink may have less to do with internet subscriptions and more to do with becoming a planetary data network. In other words, SpaceX isn't just launching satellites. It may be building the operating system for the 21st century. This is where the IPO becomes important, because investors are not valuing SpaceX as a rocket company. If SpaceX were only selling launches, a $2 trillion valuation would be nearly impossible to justify. Instead, investors are pricing a future, a company that controls launch capability, global communications infrastructure, defense technology, satellite networks, and potentially the transportation layer of an entirely new economy. In many ways, SpaceX is being valued less like an aerospace company and more like a combination of NVIDIA, Amazon Web Services, and the railroads of the 19th century. That comparison may sound extreme, but history offers similar examples. In the late 1990s, most people thought Amazon was a bookstore. The market eventually realized Amazon was building infrastructure. AWS became one of the most profitable businesses in modern history. In the mid-2000s, NVIDIA was viewed primarily as a gaming hardware company. Then artificial intelligence exploded. Suddenly, NVIDIA wasn't selling graphics cards, it was selling the infrastructure powering the AI revolution. Today, investors may be looking at SpaceX through a similar lens, not as a rocket company, but as the infrastructure provider of the next frontier. The IPO itself revealed how strongly investors believe that story. Demand reportedly exceeded available shares several times over. Investors were not simply buying SpaceX, they were competing for access. And that matters because public markets provide something governments often cannot: scale. $75 billion does not simply fund new rockets, it accelerates entire industries. It expands manufacturing, increases launch frequency, funds new satellite deployments, builds infrastructure, and perhaps most importantly, it makes future fundraising dramatically easier. Once markets begin valuing SpaceX as a multi-trillion-dollar platform company, raising additional capital becomes significantly less difficult, and SpaceX is going to need enormous amounts of capital because its most ambitious project has barely begun: Starship, the largest and most powerful launch system ever developed. But describing Starship as a bigger rocket misses the point. Starship is a complete redesign of space transportation. Its objective is full reusability, massive payload capacity, rapid turnaround launches, and dramatically lower costs. If Starship works at scale, the economics of space change completely. Space stops being expensive logistics and starts becoming industrial infrastructure. Satellite deployment becomes routine. Orbital manufacturing becomes economically viable, lunar operations become supply chains, and Mars transitions from science fiction to long-term planning. That is why investors care about Starship, not because it is technically impressive, but because it could fundamentally alter the cost structure of human expansion beyond Earth. Yet SpaceX is no longer alone. A real space economy is beginning to emerge, and competition is accelerating. Blue Origin, backed by Jeff Bezos, has entered the heavy lift market with New Glenn. Amazon is deploying Project Kuiper in an attempt to challenge Starlink's dominance. Rocket Lab continues expanding beyond small launch vehicles into broader infrastructure services. Meanwhile, governments around the world are increasing investment in space programs, but the most important competitor may not be Blue Origin. And it may not be Amazon, it may be China. Over the past decade, China has invested heavily in reusable launch systems, satellite constellations, lunar exploration programs, and independent launch capability. Beijing understands something many investors are only beginning to realize. Whoever controls the infrastructure of space may influence the next phase of global economic growth. The next space race may not look like the one that put humans on the moon. It may not be a race between astronauts. It may be a race between economic systems. Still, there are reasons to be cautious. SpaceX's future is not guaranteed. Starship remains largely unproven at operational scale. Engineering challenges remain significant. Cost assumptions may prove optimistic. Competition is increasing, and adoption of space-based infrastructure is far from certain. History is filled with revolutionary technologies that failed to meet expectations. The internet succeeded. Many others did not. Investors are betting that space infrastructure will become essential, but that outcome has not yet been written. And yet, something has already changed. For centuries, every major industry was built on Earth. Steel, oil, telecommunications, computing, artificial intelligence, every trillion-dollar opportunity existed on this planet until now. Because for the first time in modern history, investors are placing trillion-dollar bets on infrastructure beyond Earth itself. That is why the SpaceX IPO matters. Not because a company raised money, not because a valuation hit $2 trillion, but because capital markets have begun treating space as an investable economy, an asset class, a frontier worth funding. And if Starship succeeds, June 12th, 2026 may not be remembered as the day SpaceX went public. It may be remembered as the day the space economy became real and the day humanity took its first economic step beyond Earth. If you found this story valuable, leave a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. This has been Fracture Theory, where every fracture reveals a larger story. See you in the next one.